Hello everyone, Darren here, and on today's episode of WotC Academy, we are going to look at the incorrect way of approaching and fighting around a corner that you commonly see in public games. And then we're going to go and look at the different types of tanks that you find in the game and how they should best approach and fight around corners. So let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the incorrect method of fighting around a corner, and then I'm going to explain with different types of tanks how you should fight around corners. Some tactics are going to be the same regardless of the type of tank. Some tanks are going to be completely different because of how they are set up. So starting off, I'll be using the Action X here just as the base example here. You don't, and I'll get into details later. So the incorrect method that you see a lot of people doing, a lot of the inexperienced people who don't know much about armor and angling or anything like that, what they end up doing is they just go straight perpendicular to the enemy, and then they just get punished for it. So in this case here, I rolled out perpendicular to a T110 E4, and I lost pretty much half my health. So that is the incorrect way to fight around corners like that. So instead, what you want to do is it's kind of like slicing the pie. If anyone knows exactly what that is, it's a way of systematically clearing around a corner. But since, you don't have the same luxury, essentially what you want to do is you kind of want to just clear, like obviously this whole 90-degree area is going to be clear in front of you. But, you're going to like back up along a corner, like side scraping. You're going to back up and you're just going to systematically clear around the corner. Just going to clear around the corner. And I might not be angled sufficiently enough to do this here, but you just keep going till you are presented a weak point. So in this case here, I have been presented a weak point that may or may not have good RNG bouncing on my assistant here, Clumsy. In this case here, lo and behold, I have a weak point, but I'm also minimizing my exposure to him. Now, in this case here, this tank fighting CQB with a Centurion tank or anything moderately squishy like this is not recommended. This tank is not designed to brawl in a city. This tank is designed to be a second-line support vehicle. But in anything that is capable of side scraping or anything like that, this method is good for pretty much everything with the exception of a select few. And I'm just going to go back and cover, just to be thorough for everyone, the different types of tanks in the game and how you want to do this. So we're going to move on to rear-mounted turreted tanks. So here we are on the rear-mounted tanks. These could be TDs as well or anything like that. Just ignoring the fact that this thing is clumsy as hell and I exposed myself, we're just going to ignore that. Be more careful when you do this and set up a little bit farther back. But rear turreted tanks are pretty much the same thing, although you can be more aggressive with this because you're rear turreted, so that means you are exposing even less amount than your non rear turreted tanks, because you have to back up more to make up for the fact that your turret is centrally mounted with those. With, again, the rear mounted, it's exactly the same thing. You just back up till you have a clean shot, and then you just pop forward and fire. Now, you might even have a tank that is much like the 705A here, to where if you have it angled correctly, you might actually be able to literally sit here and just, well, minus horrible aim, might be able to just sit here completely exposed to the enemy and just farm blocked damage while still shooting them in the So, and of course, if you don't feel comfortable, you can push forward, and as you can see, I'm hiding the front weak spots of my tank, but my armor is sufficiently angled enough to where I don't need to pull back or pull forward a whole lot. So in this case, as you can see, I'm able to just push forward, just like back up just a little bit, get a weak point, and, you know, I can stay, again, like I said, I can stay here, or I can push forward just a little bit to hide my weak points. Now we're going to move on to seriously frontally, heavily armored tanks in the front. Now, for the next one, we're going to have heavily frontal, I don't know if I may be butchering how to explain this, but tanks with a lot of armor on the front. We're just going to call it that for right now. Heavily armored tanks. Yeah, we're going to go with that. So in this case, it would be the AMX M454 is the most heavily frontally armored normal tank that I have. In terms of just sheer armor thickness. And it also has a stupid tumor-like cupola on the top turret roof here. So the trick with these things is that you want to try and hide as many weak points as possible. Now, there is kind of a weakness on the AMX M454, so you can't just kind of roll out and be completely invincible. So as you can see just by some testing right there, that entry point there on the side angle cheeked is a weak point that if you are angled exactly like this when you peek around a corner, you are exposing that if you sit there and are just... So like if I sit out like this, that weak point is exposed, and so if I just sit here, a smart player is going to shoot that weak point and they will pen. So instead, what you want to do, so by rolling out here just enough to be able to shoot, I am hiding I'm hiding my, again, this stupid building doesn't really allow me to show it that well because it just glitches in there. I am hiding the cupola from the gun of the 215B, and for the most part, the way I'm angled, I am completely invincible on the front and the top and bottom hull of the upper and lower glacis plate. I don't know why I'm struggling to come up with actual terms here. So, but with standard rounds, of course. We did test you can pen it with premium if it's got sufficient enough pen. So, the way you want to do this is that you want to kind of do a quick rollout here. So you just roll out, you just pull back in, just pop out. So, you know, you want to do a quick move in and juke. It helps if you already have an idea of what you're going to aim at. So I'm going to do this a couple times to try again. So just back up, and for the most part, it makes it absolutely impossible for your team, your opponent, to get a good spot on the weak points, unless, of course, they are good enough to know about the weak point, the height, and everything, and pre-aim there. And if they have good timing skills, then yes, they have a good chance of maybe penning, but there's a lot of factors that they have to be on their side that they have to account for in order for it to be reliable. But the juking has been known to be a pretty good, decent, reliable tactic in preventing shots to weak points reliably penning. Moving on to the last tank type that we're going to look at, and that is going to be pretty much glass cannons, and that's going to be self-explanatory with fighting corners. Okay, so with glass cannons, there's two ways for a glass cannon or anything in this matter to fight around corners here. Now, I'm going to be using the Shashka because it's really the only flexible glass cannon that I have that wouldn't immediately delete something. So, and since I don't want to delete Clumsy in one shot, I'm going to use the Tier 8. So, starting off, the first thing that you could do is, whatever you do, don't go around the corner. You know, play the game of let them come to you. So, in this case here, what's going to happen is, you know, I'm going to sit here. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let him get impatient. I'm going to shoot him. And then, you know, at this point, he's like, oh, crap. I'm taking shots here. I could get tracked. And he's going to back around the corner to safety. Now, the next thing that I could do or the next tactic is, let's say, you know, we're brawling. You know, we're brawling or anything like that here. You know, I have another assistant over here, and they're brawling. And once he fires, oh, he's fired, he's exposed, he's tracked, whatever it is, they're distracted. I can safely go around the corner, I can safely expose myself to the enemy tank, and I can just shoot to my heart's content because they're too busy brawling. And once they fire, I don't need to worry about taking a shot because my opponent will have already fired his shot. Now, I mean, if you're facing one opponent, that can work. If you're facing multiple opponents, the best bet is for you to wait till the majority of the enemy around that corner have fired their shots before you go out there and take a risk. I would highly recommend that you do not go out there if you're facing a ton of enemies and maybe only one of them fired their gun, because then you have, you know, more than just one gun loaded waiting for something to pop around the corner. Other than that, that's pretty much the majority of fighting around corners. In the case of artillery, it just in case, because I have a feeling someone may think that I'm excluding arty. If you're going to be arty, whatever the hell you do, your only tactic is don't go around the corner. You let them come to you because you have that long aim time. You pre-aim on that spot, and when they come around the corner, you blap them. But other than that, this has been Darren in Corner Fighting Tactics, the basics. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this one, don't forget to subscribe.